Oh, it's not a cut. That's a slice.
Now this is a quack hook.
Oh,
Short
wow.
and into the right rough, headed to the trees.
Oh my, that's a shank. He decided to re-tee. That's a shank. Oh, man.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Two-Way Miss podcast. Thank you, as always, for listening or watching wherever, whenever you are joining us. We're going to jump right into this one. There's not a lot of fluff to go around. I'm Regz. That's the good buddy Banksy. We got some stuff to talk about, man.
Yeah, a little bit.
The golf world kind of exploded on Tuesday morning with the news from CNBC of all places. Apparently, Jay Monahan just loves those guys over at CNBC. Loves leaking them the news that the original. So we're going to break this down pretty easy. We're going to talk about the original report. We're going to talk about what it actually means, because the headlines and the initial reporting was kind of a little bit not misleading, but just wasn't all the way true about actually what's happening.
Go figure.
Yeah. And then we're going to give our reactions to everything. So the initial reports come out that it says the PGA Tour and LIV Golf have merged. Merged was like the big buzzword
Dun, dun, dun.
that all the headlines used, all the tweets were using. And then as I constantly refresh Twitter over the next like several hours, this like more and more and more started coming out. So here are the highlights, I guess we'll say. Number one, 0 players knew this was happening.
0.
This was done in a room of, it's been rumored, 7 people. One of them, Jay Monahan. One of them, God, I never forget that guy's name. Or I never remember that guy's name. PIF chairman. It's going to come up here in just a second. Where is he? Yasser Al-Rumayyan. Thank you. I'm sure I'll remember that. But anyway, Jay Monahan, Yasser Al-Rumayyan, 2 of the PGA Tour's sort of top executives, and I'm sure 2 or 3 people from his side as well. Apparently the talks have been going for quite a while, but this framework deal was done in 7 days. And the news broke to players and everyone else in the golf world Tuesday morning. 0 players knew what was happening. 0 media outlets knew what was happening. So everyone was kind of scrambling to actually figure out what this meant. In the past day or so, they've gotten, more and more information. Obviously, Jay has had his own conferences, even though he's pretty useless. Just the reporting has started to happen on this. So we're learning more and more about actually what this means. So let's just talk about that. There's no use in going into sort of what people thought was happening, anything like that. Let's talk about what actually is happening. This is a initial framework deal. So nothing has been approved by the PGA Tour board, the PGA policy board, which it needs to be approved by, or anything. This is just these guys were in a room and agreed to a framework of how to, number one, create a for-profit company that will essentially be above the PGA Tour as it stands today. So the PGA Tour as it stands today is a 501c6 company, which means it's a nonprofit business. You have to operate those businesses a certain way in order to maintain your status. Obviously, it's very big for taxes and all those things. This new company will be a for-profit company, and under that company will be all of the PGA Tour, like golfing rights, all of the LIV Golf rights to everything. So pretty much everything LIV owns, this company will oversee. The DP World Tour, same thing as the PGA Tour, will roll up into this larger company. And Yasser will be the chairman of the board. Jay Monahan will be the CEO, and the 2 PGA Tour executives will kind of be in their still high executive roles in this new company. The PGA Tour, as it stands today, will maintain a majority stake in this new company, named to be determined later. The Saudi investment fund is a minority owner in this new company. And presumably a lot of people are saying that in order to kind of smooth this over with players, that they will also receive a sort of equity stake in this new for-profit company. None of that has actually happened. That's just something that people are speculating, because players are obviously pretty pissed that they got told about this Tuesday morning. So what does that kind of really mean? Number one, largely the PGA Tour as it stands today will continue to operate as it has. As a for-profit company, they have the ability to do some different things in terms of paying people. Like, they don't have to slap a weird sponsor on it, like the Comcast Business Top 10, in order to try and pay guys more money. Like the PIP list that they came out with, they don't have to sort of mask these things like they did when they're under the 501c6 company. How that all works out, no one has any idea. We're not going to get into that. But it essentially, what it really boils down to is that the PGA Tour is what it is, and they've allowed the Saudi investment fund to essentially purchase a minority stake in professional golf. What this means for the LIV Tour, for right now, it continues as is. From what they say, they're going to try and involve team golf in this like the PGA Tour moving forward somehow. A lot of people are saying that, yeah, maybe that happens for half a year and then essentially it'll be gone, because nobody really wants that to do that. So in what it means for like how tournaments look, like when they go to the Memorial, let's say, or the API or Riviera, much of that doesn't change, other than you're probably going to see some pretty big, like Aramco oil sponsorship signs and commercials while you're watching, because they're going to be the biggest sponsor and investor that the PGA Tour has. So what does the PGA Tour get out of this? Well, Jay Monahan and these executives got paid, like, a lot.
I was gonna say, it sounds like Jay Monahan got promoted himself.
A lot, like a lot of money. So let's just put that out there first.
A lot of money, and probably whatever number you have in your head, probably double it.
Yeah, maybe even more.
Maybe more. Isn't that some shit? You do.
We're gonna talk about that. Yeah,
shady.
We're gonna talk about this.
And you know what? I'm just gonna promote myself.
Right. We're gonna talk about this because that's, I think, a pretty big part of this. We don't know how. There will be a way for LIV players to get back their PGA Tour memberships. We don't know how that's going to happen. There's a lot of speculation out there, but there's no process in place for this to happen. Majors obviously are their own entity, so those will all remain the same. Nothing's changing with the majors as they are today. I'm sure we'll see a Saudi Arabian PGA Tour event now. I am sure that they will be a major sponsor to other events that go on the PGA Tour. And that's kind of all we know about what this is. Let's get into the shadiness behind it, or just the hypocrisy behind it. So, Jay Monahan obviously came out and said all the things he said about LIV, about the Saudi Arabian government. He brought in 9/11 families to help sort of prove his point. The line that everyone's parroting is that you've never had to apologize for being a PGA Tour member. All those things were BS, were bullshit. Because somebody put a check big enough in front of him, and then his morality went out the window. He might, I don't think he had any to begin with, but
no,
this just kind of put a light into it. And again, the reason the number you might have in your head, it's a lot more, is because everyone knew the shit he was going to take for this. So he's getting compensated for being the public facing like asshat
Yeah,
in this
it's almost,
situation.
it's like, yeah, and this is all within a year.
Yeah, Liv's been
Like,
an actual thing for a year and a half.
and it took a year for him to completely go
Yep.
back on everything that he stood for, everything that he worked out, and and he's basically promoting himself to a higher position, getting paid an astronomical amount of money, and just basically, I mean, completely selling out on everything that he said and claimed to have stood for within within a year.
Yes.
Um, it's
Yeah.
you did a beautiful job explaining everything, by the way. But for them to say, "Hey, we're going to roll this out 2024 with nothing but this framework in place," do you think these players are going to be willing to do that fast and
Yeah.
just
So
kind of say, "Okay, yeah, let's do this, guys"?
yeah. So here's the really big thing that we have to remember through all this. Number one, this is a framework agreement. Absolutely nothing has been approved by the PGA
Right.
Tour board, the policy board, and
It has to
the
go
Department
through
of Justice,
a vote.
an antitrust, everything. Like, if you thought the DOJ was looking into like live as a sort of like that was one of the lawsuits. The PGA Tour was like, live can't be a thing because it's monopolizing golf or whatever it was, or so or live was suing the PGA Tour because it was saying it's trying to monopolize the world of professional golf. If they were already going down that rabbit hole, you just created an even bigger company that encompasses every professional golf tour almost on the planet. So obviously the Department of Justice is going to have something to say about this.
Yeah.
So as of right now, nothing is official until the board of directors of the PGA Tour approves it, the policy board of the PGA Tour approves it, which has players on it.
Right.
And then obviously there's going to be federal investigations into this company as a whole before it can get off the ground. So there's a lot of stuff that has to happen in order for this company and this sort of framework to go through as is. Number two, a lot of what I've read and seen reported is that the continuing lawsuits from LIV against the PGA Tour were costing the PGA Tour upwards of $100 million a year in legal fees.
Sucking them dry.
And then number two is that things came to light during discovery, and Jay Monahan and these two executives realized that they were going to be in some deep shit if this stuff got public. Like shady business dealings, weird dealings with vendors of tours, sponsorships, like a lot of not okay business going on. And all that was going to come to light because of these legal of these lawsuits. So almost the biggest thing that this framework agreement does is all lawsuits have been dropped by LIV against the PGA Tour and vice versa. So that part of this goes away. And I think that's where we really see the motivation. It was personal based. It was based on them, those three guys at the highest level of leadership on the PGA Tour, realizing that they were going to have their shit handed to them because of their actions. So immediately all that goes away. And like you said, they've been compensated appropriately.
Right.
Or who knows, not appropriately, but they've been compensated for.
There's no repercussions for this. We're just going to promote ourselves.
Right. There are
pay ourselves.
There are no legal repercussions, strictly moral.
Man,
And at the end of the day, those guys don't care about that.
no, nope.
Um, so
And,
that's
and
that's
the,
what's that's what's starting to be reported and starting to sort of be speculated, is that the stuff that was going to come out in these legal proceedings was going to be really, really bad for the top level of the PGA Tour. That I'm not saying that makes any of this okay or right or morally okay or any of that. I think the biggest thing is that, like, Jay Monahan like took the 9/11 Families United, fund and put them into this, like had them protesting live events, had them doing it, but like used them as a way to detract from live.
yeah,
And when he got asked the question about that, he stumbled through it like my kindergartner trying to answer a third grade math problem. He obviously didn't have an answer because he's a scumbag.
he's a scumbag. Yeah,
So that is what it is. But when you talk, like, these guys and probably many executives of the largest companies in the world don't have a moral compass.
right.
It's about money.
And they make their own rules.
Yep.
Because they can.
Yes. So let's just get into, I mean, we can talk very quickly about Rory had a press conference today. He said flat out, he's like, I don't want to be here right now. I feel like a sacrificial lamb. I feel like I've been drug out there by Jay and them and those guys to like
100%.
do this for the tour. I lost
all
out
for,
on
all for
I
nothing,
lost out on
right.
hundreds of millions of dollars.
Yeah, imagine what his offer would have been.
Yep.
What do you think his offer was? 400
400. Yeah.
400 million?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. I mean,
and you put me out there to defend you, and now you've completely flipped. And he almost he looked more dejected than I've
sure
ever
he did.
seen Rory ever.
Because we've talked about this. He puts his he talks a lot, but usually it's coming from the heart. Like, he puts himself
And
out
because
there.
Jay doesn't speak ever. He he holed himself off for a year and a half and made Rory talk about why the PGA Tour.
Yeah, which all these press obligations and all that added stress, that translates to his golf game.
Oh yeah.
As well. So even, he put salvaging and standing up for the tour almost before golf.
Yep.
Like, he was doing this to help protect the tour and promote the tour. And this is how you get treated. Like, this is what happens.
So essentially, Rory also said that he's had to resign himself to the fact that no one can stop this Saudi money from getting into sports. They just have too much of it. And the people who run these things only care about money.
Right.
So it's happened in Formula One and soccer, in a bunch of other places.
The guy that you were, but it's different when the guy that you're straight up protecting and thinking that has your back and you're on the same team flips the script and screws you and dicks you over like that.
Yep.
I bet he probably has so many frustration, pissed off,
and also
doesn't want to play.
And I think most of that, almost probably half of that, comes from realizing there's nothing he can do about it.
Right. Yeah. And he missed out on $400 million.
Right. And the only thing that I've kind of heard as the most relevant way that these guys could sort of take control back is just to say, I'm not playing on the PGA Tour anymore.
Yeah.
They're not contracted to do this.
Right. They show up for majors.
And his point was, this new company, the PGA Tour, doesn't exist without you guys.
Yeah.
It needs players. It needs marketable players to make money.
So where's the push to be like, we're not discussing anything until Monahan's gone.
Yeah, it hasn't. I mean, they did say that in the players' meeting there were sort of calls for his head, but not.
I'm
It
sure.
wasn't like. It wasn't like so overwhelming. You know what I mean?
I mean, people.
And I just think people were really just. I'm sure more and more will come of it.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to take time to process what
Yeah.
happened. The fact that all these guys found this out when the rest of the general public found out, that's, I mean, it's just such a slap to the face,
Yeah.
and it's awful.
Yeah.
It's awful. It's terrible.
It is really bad. It's really bad.
And it hurt, like, as of right now, like, this is hurting golf.
Yeah.
Like, this season is just gonna have such a shitty feel to it.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, more is going to continue to come out. Like you said, none of this is finalized. It still has to go through the board. It still has to get the votes. But I can't imagine what some of these players are feeling. And, golf's a very individual sport. Some of these guys are like, hey, we're just going to sit around and wait and hope we get paid somehow, like it's going to be,
I think that's one PGA Tour player did kind of come out and say, like, look, Jay has the trump card, like, money talks. Like, he's going to be able to figure, he has the means now to pay these guys somehow. Right. And that's going to shut a lot of them up.
Yeah. And the problem is, though, and now you're going to have shitty golfers making stupid amounts of money.
Well, that's where we just don't know yet. We don't know.
And we're going to be stuck watching these guys suck at golf. And
we just don't know how that all is going to work out yet. Like, that's the thing that we still have to figure out. I just think
there's a lot to figure out before the start of next season.
And as of right now, the PGA Tour will continue as is. LIV Golf is continuing as is. Nothing.
Yeah, but with the season such an asterisk on it, though, it's because this is all that's going to consume the rest of this season.
Yeah, it's all that's going to be talked about.
Is this stuff? So I mean, regardless, that's great. The season's going on as normal, but it's not. It's going to be tainted with all this craziness.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So look, I don't know, like, that's where we are. I hope we did a good job of explaining it. I think our initial reactions are just like, it's a really scumbaggy move by a bunch of guys who have just no moral compass and are just worried about making the most money for themselves that they can.
And not exposing things that they did
right
illegally or shade. Yeah,
exactly.
Let's cover our ass and pay ourselves a shit ton of money.
Yep. And I think ultimately the Saudi government got exactly what they wanted. They never they never intended LIV to be a viable option.
Yeah.
They just wanted a seat at the table to get, like, in the ears of the CEOs that sponsor golf tournaments, of the CEOs that play golf, of the sponsors that sponsor golf tournaments. They wanted a way to increase their business profile and their investments in business to try and overshadow their murdering of journalists and beheading of people who talk out against the government and their treatment of women and homosexuals and everyone else. And they accomplished it. Like, it worked. And that's a bummer. But like we said, eventually the money just talks louder than anything else to these people. And that's kind of where we're at. There will be a bunch of stuff that continues to come out about this. I think I've listened to like 7 hours of podcasts already in the past 2 days. I've read dozens of articles. I've read hundreds of tweets, I think, just of all the things that have been coming out. And we are still so early in this. Like, so early in this process, it's unbelievable.
Yeah. But I hope they start providing the good news or getting this out as fast as possible because you have so many dejected people, announcers, players, fans. Like,
Yeah, I think
they better have the bright side of this available sooner than later.
yeah. I mean, essentially they've put the bright side as the PGA Tour controls professional golf still, but now we have enough money to do everything we want to do.
Yeah,
and we'll have it for the rest of time because
and
that
I'm
money's
sure
not
there's
going
no
away anytime soon.
right. Yeah, I'm sure there's no fine print in there anywhere.
Yeah, of course.
I'm sure it's clean and clear.
I'm sure it's
and,
all fine. Very above board, you know.
Yeah, it'll be fine. You won't understand.
Don't even need to look at it.
I'm not going to bore you with the details.
Right. No,
just sign.
don't worry
just
about
sign
that.
here and sign here and
everything will be fine.
Initial here.
Yep.
Everything's fine. Yikes.
So I don't know, man. I think that's where we're at. Did you have anything else? Any other thoughts? I know this is a quick one, but we really just wanted to come on here and give we wanted to kind of explain to everyone who listens, because it's very confusing with all the stuff that came out, exactly what this meant. So I think we did a good job of establishing that, give our initial reactions to everything, and we're going to continue to talk about this for many, many episodes to come, because this isn't going away anytime soon.
Yeah. But we do have a major coming up.
We do. So eventually we're going to...
Next week?
Yeah.
2 weeks.
When is it?
Next week? 2 weeks.
Over Father's Day, right? 2 weeks.
Yeah, 2 weeks.
2 weeks. So we'll obviously have a preview pod for the U.S. Open coming up. We'll have our typical recap pod. And look, we will continue to pepper in news about this whenever more and more things come out, as they inevitably will. Yeah, I think that covers everything we know up to this point, man.
Yep.
All right. Well, look, we hope that you at least found this informative. I don't know if I feel any better, but I hope you found it informative. I hope you appreciated our takes on it. For the first time ever, I put up a reaction vid for the pod on YouTube. Like, literally on Tuesday afternoon, I just threw it up there. I turned the camera on and I just recorded a quick 5 minutes of just like my mind oozing out of my ear. So if you haven't checked that out, check it out. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. All our podcasts will go up on YouTube. We'll continue, we'll pump out some reaction vids if something really crazy happens again. But there's still so much to talk about. So get subscribed. Subscribe to the podcast wherever you get your podcast. Doesn't matter. Spotify, Apple, Google, Amazon, everywhere you get them. Just search the Two-Way Miss. You will find us. Leave us a rating. Leave us a comment. Share it with your friends. We really appreciate everyone that has been so loyal to listening and sharing it with maybe other people you golf with, maybe your dad or your father-in-law who enjoys golf, whoever. Share it to them. Send them the link. We really appreciate the support that we've gotten so far. And listen, we will be back to talk a lot more about this. We got a major coming up in 2 weeks, so we'll have our usual preview and recap pods on that one. So be sure to get subscribed to the YouTube channel and to the podcast. You can follow us on Instagram at B&B Podcast. You can follow that guy on Instagram at FairbanksC23. You can follow my Twitter at Big Regz with a Z. And yeah, I'm sure you were as mind blown as we were, and we will continue to talk about this, for a while until we get this stuff figured out. But have a good night, everyone. We will catch you next week, and we'll look forward to some more news about this. So see everyone later.
Swing hard, everyone.
Oh, it's not a cut. That's a slice.
Now this is a quack hook.
Oh,
Short
wow.
and into the right rough, headed to the trees.
Oh my God, it's a shank. He decided to re-tee. That's a shank.